If you are new to SMITE and like the Guardian class but don't know who to play or where to start, I'm going to be going over the top 3 best Guardians for beginners. What's up guys, I'm Kitten of Doom, and if this is your first time here and you want to learn how to play SMITE, learn about certain gods as well as some tips and tricks, then you are in the right place. If you find this video helpful and want to see more like it, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. The first god we are going to be covering is Geb, and he is an Egyptian Guardian. Geb was actually my very first Diamond Guardian, and I really think he is super fun to play. He might seem a little boring at first, but he is a really great support and can really help his teammates and set up a lot of kills. And as for some pros and cons of Geb, it is really hard to kill Geb late game. He can give teammates a shield to help them survive, and that shield gives them a little bit of CC immunity once it's placed on them. So it can actually really help your teammates out when they are about to die, or it can actually get them out of things like Ares ultimate, just because you can give them that little bit of crowd control immunity from his shield. It's probably one of the best Guardian abilities in the game, I think. A lot of people hate dealing with it. It's almost like a free shell every 15 or so seconds when it comes off cooldown. Geb also has high mobility with his first ability. He has high defense thanks to his passive, which is basically an anti-crit passive. He has amazing setup potential with his ultimate, and his ultimate just gives a great stun, and it is great for initiation and disengage. You can set up your team with this, and you can also stun the enemy team to help your team get away. He has great diving potential in team fights and in towers, especially if you pick up Blink on him. He can just blink and ult into the enemy team, which is great setup. And of course the last point is that he has amazing setup for kills. Some cons on Geb is that his escape can be body blocked before the immunity takes effect. So I believe the first 3 seconds while he is rolling, the enemy team can get in front of him and it will stop his rollout. So you just got to be careful on rolling out near people so that they don't take away your really good escape. Geb is also really weak early game. He is not the best at helping his hunter clear in dual lane. But once you get him to mid to late game, he is really good. So you just got to be careful in that early game stage. He's also a big target and easy to hit, so just gotta be careful on that and not take up too much damage. And as for Geb's abilities, his first ability, he basically turns into a big rolling rock, and he damages and slows enemies that he hits. And he does stop on the first god he hits, so like I said earlier, he can be body blocked when trying to get away. He does increase speed as he travels, so at first he's really slow and then he gains a lot of speed towards the end of it. Once Geb is at his top speed, he becomes CC immune and can knock back enemy gods. So if you play this really smart, you can actually roll out and get your CC immunity to get out of certain god abilities if you don't have your shield up. Also, if you're chasing after a god, it's really important that you cancel Geb's rollout, because if you end up chasing them and you're CC immune and knock them back, then you actually just saved them instead of getting closer to them to kill them. So that is another little point about that ability as well. And as for Geb's second ability, he creates a shockwave which ripples out from him in a cone that does damage and knocks up all enemies. And this damage decreases the further the enemy is away from him. So this is a really good peel tool. It can also help set up good kills. If you pair a Willix with Geb, she can actually ult off of this little knockup that he does. So overall, I really love this ability on him. It just helps in so many situations with setting up and saving teammates. And for Geb's third ability, it is his stone shield, and he can put this shield on himself or an ally. The shield blocks all damage and lasts until it expires or if it takes enough damage to be destroyed. This shield also cleanses any crowd control effects when it's first applied to them. So as I said earlier, this is really what makes Geb so good. He can save his teammates. Whenever this is up, he can save himself and peel for himself as well if he is low. Probably, like I said earlier, the best ability in the game as a support, just because this is truly there to help out your team. And for Geb's ultimate, it is a big circle that does magic damage to all the enemy gods in the area, and it does damage based on the percent of their current health, and it also stuns all gods in the radius. This is really what makes Geb such a great setup god for kills, and it really just makes him even better at peeling for his teammates and saving them, because he has a big area that he can just stun enemy gods to help his team get away. The real trick with his ultimate is to pair it with Blink, so if you blink in and Cataclysm, and then use your 2 to knock them up, they're really stuck there for a good amount of time, and your teammates can follow up on that and get potential kills. So overall, really, really good ability for Geb as a support. And last but not least, his passive basically just makes critical strike chance decrease by 75%. So if any hunters are building crit and they attack you, it's going to be doing a lot less damage because of his passive. So if you're looking for an easy support that can actually help your team, I would highly recommend Geb. You will love him when you start playing him. And next up we have the hug bug himself, Khepri. Khepri is also an Egyptian guardian. Khepri is another really good one for beginners. I really think he is easy to understand, and he really has a lot of abilities that can support and help his teammates. As for some pros for Khepri, he has some really great setup with his abilities. He has excellent crowd control. He helps his allies escape easily, can just be through his crowd control or through his ultimate. And he revives his allies. So when he ults someone and they actually end up dying, he can revive them so that they never died and they just come back to Khepri. So it's a really cool ability and really fun to use because a lot of teammates end up really appreciating you when you revive them. And of course, Khepri has some high defense, and he is a little bit harder to kill. As for some cons on Khepri, he does have a poor teamfight presence, because he generally stays in the back line, helping his mage and carry not get dived on. And if Khepri doesn't have follow-up, it really leaves him as like a sitting duck, because he can just get killed once he plucks someone. So just kind of be mindful on if your teammates are around and have them follow up. And like Geb, of course, Khepri is a big target and easy to hit. One last con to keep in mind is that Khepri's ultimate can be countered by gods that have executes. So these gods are direct counters to Khepri. It is Thanatos, Alquang, and Achilles. They all have executes in their ultimates. Basically, if you ult a teammate as Khepri and they have that aura around them, they can still be executed and won't be revived. So just always try and remember that it can be countered. And a quick overview of Khepri's abilities. In his passive, every 5 seconds, he applies a shield to himself and nearby allied gods for 2% of the target's maximum health for 15 seconds. And this is just a nice little passive that can kind of help him and his teammates have a little bit extra protection. For Khepri's first ability, he lunges forward, dealing damage to enemies he passes through. If he connects to an enemy god, he stops and grabs them and begins pulling them backwards. And he does gain increased protections while he is plucking someone. And while they are grabbed by Khepri, enemies are silenced for the full duration of the pull. So this is a really great setup tool for Khepri and his teammates, just because he can grab them and then your teammates can unleash all their abilities and auto attacks on them. So it's a really fun ability to just grab people and just hold them there. And like I said earlier, you just need to be careful on the situations where you do go in and grab someone. Just make sure your team is around you so you can have them follow up so you don't die. This is also an escape option if you need to get out and you are low. You can use this as a dash. Just be careful to not get in front of any god, or else it will stop you and you might die. In Khepri's second ability, he releases a ball of sun, and if it touches enemies, it starts doing damage to them. It reduces their physical protections and it does damage over time. If allies are hit by this ball, they take reduced damage from enemies during the duration of it. So this is nice because it can be used offensively and defensively. So if you have a teammate that is being dove on, you should put this buff on them so that they take a little bit reduced damage. And also after you pull someone, you can easily set this on someone to start dealing some tick damage. And if you're lucky enough, the tick damage will result in a kill. For Khepri's third ability, he creates a solar flare at a target location, which deals damage and roots all targets in the area. So this is another really good way for him to set up his team and how he has so much crowd control. Usually the best things that I like to do is to root someone with this ability and then go in on grab them, because then I won't miss his grab and then I can guarantee some extra CC on them to get some setup. And what makes Khepri really good is his ultimate, and basically he blesses an allied god, immediately cleansing them of all crowd control, as well as granting them movement speed and immunity to slow effects. And if the ally dies while this blessing is on them, they are revived with a percentage of their maximum health, and they are returned back to Khepri's location. You do gotta be aware that executes counter his ultimate pretty hard, so if Khepri blesses a ally and they are low enough to be executed by gods like Alquang and Achilles, then they are just immediately going to die and they are not going to be revived. It can really come in handy just to revive a teammate after all of the enemy team has unleashed probably like their ultimates and a bunch of their damage, so that you and your team can actually go back in the fight and end up winning it. And it's a great denier tool for them to get farther ahead in golden experience from killing your teammate. He can also use this on himself if he is in trouble, so overall this ability is really good to have on a support. So if you want to give some people some hugs, I would really recommend Khepri. And the last guardian we are going to be covering is Xing Tian, and Xing is a Chinese guardian. I really think Xing Tian is a great start for beginners that are looking into a more of a bruiser type guardian that can do damage. Xing Tian is super fun to play and he can really do some good bit of damage even when he's building tanky. As for some pros on Xing Tian, he has really good sustain due to his passive, which gives him HP 5. He has insane frontline potential and setup with his abilities. His 2 and his ult particularly are really great for setting your team up. He does a good bit of damage while still being tanky, so even if you want to build him just straight up tank, he does really well. Or if you want to put a couple hybrid items on him, it really works great. He actually is a great solo laner as well when you build him hybrid. Xing has a heavy lane presence. He's really good at being a lane bully and pressuring the enemy team just due to his 2, especially if you are coupled up with a hunter. You guys can do a lot of great damage. Xing has really good crowd control in his second ability and ultimate. And lastly, he has great mobility with his third ability. He can get in and out of fights pretty well. As for some cons, his ult can be avoided and even beadsed. And gods with CC immune ultimates can also immune his ult. So he just has to really rely on beads being down or ultimates being down so that he can actually throw the enemy team into his team. Xing can be punished if teammates don't follow up or if he dives in too far in a fight. And lastly, Xing is mana hungry early game. And as for his abilities, in his passive, he gains stacks of rage each time he hits an enemy with an ability. And for each stack, he gains HP 5. And HP 5 is the amount of health you regenerate in 5 seconds. He just really has good sustain with this passive when he just keeps nailing enemy gods with his abilities. So really good overall passive for a tank especially. And his first ability, he releases a roar that damages enemies and reduces their basic attack damage. Enemies also take damage over time based on their maximum health. So this is an initial hit of damage and then it ticks as well. So really good overall for helping your ADC clear waves. It's his main damaging tool that can really do a lot of damage and there's nothing really more to it. It's just a pretty good overall damage ability. For his second ability, he launches an attack with his axe that knocks up opponents in the air before slamming them into the ground and rooting them. This root really lasts a long time. It feels like in Smite, has some really good damage. It's really great for just pinning down enemy gods so that you and your team can unleash even more damage on them to kill them. I would say going against a Xing, it is never fun to get rooted by him. It is super annoying, which means it's a really good ability for him. So I would always recommend knocking them up and then hitting them with the one just so that you can guarantee that damage. You also do want to use this as a peel tool if your teammates are in trouble. Try and peel off gods that are trying to kill them with this. The third ability, he leaps and he does damage to enemies where he lands. It's just a little bit of damage, it's not too crazy, but he may leap again within 3 seconds. So technically he has 2 leaps. And while he's in the air, he gets increased protections, which are refreshed if he connects with a target. I really generally use this to get in and out of fights. I think there's been a couple situations where I do get maybe a couple kills with the damage of this. It's kind of hard to connect at times, but really fun to just leap around and use this to get in and to get where you need to be. And lastly, for Xing's ultimate, he spins, grabbing and hitting enemies and throws them in the direction he is facing. And the damage dealt to enemies is dealt on the grab and in the throw as well. And he spins 3 times. This is really, really good as a support ultimate, just like I said earlier, for setting up your team and basically scooping up the enemy team to throw them into one place so that your hunter and mage can put all of their like AoE abilities into one area so that you can actually get a lot of kills if none of the enemy team immunes this. This is what really makes Xing Tian a good threat, and a lot of the mids and carries don't want to be around him when he has his ult. So just be careful to watch out for people's beads cooldowns so that you can get some good grabs. And you will be burning a lot of people's beads and ults with this, so if you are able to burn their beads so that the next time your team goes in to get an easier kill, that's totally good too. And that is going to wrap up the top 3 guardians I think are really great for beginners. Let me know what you guys think and what guardians helped you when you first started out playing Smite. The next video we will be going over is the top 3 best assassins for beginners, and then finishing it up with the top 3 best warriors. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.